Good morning, class. Today we are going to be talking about the quadratic formula. Here we know that when we have our equation in standard form is, it could be any number, but for this example it's 4x squared minus x minus 3. When we have our quadratic formula, we're going to know that x squared is a, our x value is b, and our constant is c. So what is my number for A? Class?
4.
What is my number for B?
-1.
And what is my number for C?
-3.
Good. Now the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'll give you a second to copy that down. Now for example 1, we are going to find the solution. The equation it gives us is x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. Now we know that we need to find our A, B, and C, so we're going to put on the side A, B, and C. A is, what is my A?
1.
1. What is my B?
6.
And what is my C?
9.
So we know that we're going to write the equation. I recommend writing it with parentheses so that you can just plug in the information. It's negative B plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Do you see how I put the parentheses? If you do it in this fashion, you should not make a mistake. Now we get our information. B is 6, B is 6, A is 1, C is 9. Then our A on the bottom is also a 1, and then we go ahead and multiply to solve. Go ahead and work it out. So we have negative times 6 is negative 6, plus or minus 6 times 6 is 36, minus 4 times 9 is 36, square root, over 2. We move forward. We have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. When we have the square root of 0, we have nothing because it's a 0. Square root of 0 is nothing. We're going to have negative 6 over 2. Then we reduce 6 over 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 is our answer. Any questions?
Oh, yes, I do have a question.
Yes.
Once it has a 0, and since the 0 has no value at this state, if there's a, we just automatically take out the plus and the minus?
Correct. The plus and the minus applies here. Since there is nothing, there is nothing.
So what if there wasn't this?
That's the next equation.
Okay.
So we know how to handle a 0, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Good. B. We have the equation x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. What's the first thing I need to find?
A and C.
A, B, C. What is my A?
1.
What is my B?
2.
What is my C?
-8.
Can you slow down a little? I mean, I'm there, but
So then we have to do our quadratic formula. Remember, recommend using parentheses. Our quadratic formula is negative parentheses plus or minus the square root parentheses squared minus 4 parentheses. All of this over 2 parentheses. Now we know that B is a 2, so a 2 goes in all the B's. A is 1, put a 1 in the A's. C is negative 8. Does everybody have this equation?
Yes.
Okay, negative times a 2 is a negative 2, plus or minus, don't forget the plus or minus. Then 2 times 2 is
4.
4, minus 4 times 1 is 4.
4.
Negative 4 times negative 8 is
Is a positive 32.
a positive 32. Remember, this is in a square root. All of this is over
2.
2 times 1 is
2.
2. We're all there?
I have 2 4s.
Where?
Right here, I don't know how you got 2 4s.
Okay, here, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. This 4 is the same. 4 times 8 is 32. You got it twice. You were supposed to multiply this 4 times this 8 to give you 32. So just switch them. Okay. Now we move over our negative 2 plus or minus the square root. What is 32 plus 4?
36.
Over 2. What's the next step? I have a square root, right?
Yes.
36 is a perfect square.
Yes.
So we have negative 2, which is the negative 2. Don't forget your plus or minus. The square root of 36 is 6
Over 2.
over 2.
Separate equations.
No. Sorry, yes. Depending which way you go. So here we have our negative 2 plus or minus 6 over 2. We cannot reduce just yet. We have to do that at the very end. So since we have a plus and we have a minus, we have to split to show negative 2 plus 6 over 2. There's the plus, there's the plus. And the other one's going to be negative 2 minus 6 over 2. There's the negative, there's the negative. We're all on the same page? Then we solve for the top. Negative 2 plus 6 is
4.
over
2.
which is
2.
2. 2 is my answer for the top. On the bottom, negative 2 and negative 6 is
Negative 8.
negative 8 over
2.
reduced.
Negative 4.
My answers are 2 and negative 4. Yes.
Okay, so on letter A, the first problem on the back, since there was a 0, did you just stick with the negative 6, right? Right here. You just stick with the negative 6.
Correct. This disappears. You don't have to split it because a negative 0 and a positive 0 is still 0.
Okay.
So it stays in 6. 6 divided by 2 is 0. C. Remember, we're working with the quadratic formula. In the quadratic formula, the rule is we need to have an x squared minus an x minus the constant. So if I give you 2x squared plus 3 equals 5x, what do I need to do?
We're going to move the 5x to the other side.
Where is that minus 500?
5x.
You see how the 5x is on the other side of the equal sign? It's not in the correct form. So that we have to move the 5x over.
But is it specifically under something, or is it just this?
No, it looks like that. You see it? And I want to make it look in standard form, which standard form looks like this. It's set equal to 0, which means I need to set this equal to 0. And to set this equal to 0, it's going to be 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 equals 0. Now I can use the quadratic formula. Remember, you have your A, your B, and your C. A is 2. B is negative 5. And C is 3. Write your equation. Plug and play. -5, -5, 2, 3, 2. A negative times a -5 is
Positive 5.
+5. Plus or minus, -5 times -5 is
25.
a +25. We have a -4 times 2 is
Negative 8.
-8. -8 times 3 is
Negative
-24. All over
4.
4. We move on to the next step. We combine 25 and 24. It gives us
1 plus or minus square root 1
over 4, which becomes 5 plus or minus, what's the square root of 1? 1 over 4.
And split.
Now we need to do our split. Since we're out of room, I'm going to do the split over here. It's 5 plus 1 over 4 and 5 minus 1 over 4. 5 plus 1 is 6 over 4. 5 minus 1 is 4 over 4.
3 over 2.
3 over 2 and 1. The main point from this example is to know to set our equation to 0. By setting it to 0, we can do the quadratic formula. I'm going to turn the page. This is the last example. Here we have example D. We have 2x squared. I'm sorry, you know what? Let me change it. Let's put x squared equals 4x minus 1. Now, it's x squared equals 4x minus 1. We do know we need to set it to 0. And you might be tempted just to move this guy over.
But you have to move that over.
Why?
Because if you move the x squared over to 4x minus 1, it's still not going to be in the correct state.
Well, we can put it in the correct standard form. The problem is we want to try to keep this as a positive. So if we move it, it becomes a negative. If we leave it, it stays as a positive. So we move this over. And how do we move this over?
You subtract.
Subtract. Subtract 4x plus 1. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. We do our quadratic formula. We do our ABC. A equals 1. B equals -4. C equals 1. Plug in your alphabet. We have -4, -4, 1, 1, 1. Solve. Negative times -4 is 4. Plus or minus the square root. 16 minus 4 times 1 is 4. Times 1 is still a -4. All over 2. Because 2 times 1 is 2. We move forward. 16 minus 4 is 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 is 12. 12 over 2. Now this is not completely done yet. We can reduce the 12. To reduce the 12, we need to get two multiples that will give us 12, and one of those multiples has to be a square root. We automatically should know that to get a 12, it's 4 times 3. 3 is not a square root, but 4 is a square root. 4 will give us 2. So we rewrite that to show 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 3 over 2. We take the square root of 4, so we move everything over to show 4 plus or minus. Now the square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 3 over 2. We're good? Now here we can reduce. 4 divided by 2 is?
2.
Plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is?
1.
1. You do not have to put the 1 because we know there is a 1 there when we put a square root of 3.
Wait, why is there one? Oh,
There doesn't have to be a 1. I'm putting it because I explained it and I want to make sure you know that there is a 1 in front of the square root.
Wait, but what did he do to get that 1?
Okay.
That was a 1.
2 divided by 2
Is 1.
is 1.
Okay.
This answer is the same as 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. It's the same. Kind of like when you have x or 1x, you know there's a 1 in the front. Any questions?